Ancient Wisdom and Your Health. I just have a book. I'm just kind of looking through here. This one is by my teacher and the true man of wisdom, no longer with us. God bless his soul. His name is Dr. Ramses Salim, born and raised in Egypt. And because he reached such a high level of a degree, he was accepted into what you might call a brotherhood or the true wisdom of Egypt that was taken underground in about 600 BC. In about 600 BC, the Egyptians were invaded, and there was a lot of changes that were taking place in Egypt. You guys have probably heard of Akhenaten. You've heard of Amenhotep III. Amenhotep III kind of wanted to change everything in Egypt from the supposed worship of Amun and to the Aten. And Aten represented the one God. And I don't want to get into this too much, but there's a lot of changes taking place. And then Amenhotep III's son was born, Amenhotep IV, which changed his name to Akhenaten. And he was taking the information from his father and then saying, hey, we're going to change all of Egypt and worship the one God. And a lot of things changed, a lot of energy shift. There was invasions by other forces, Persians, and eventually the Romans, and then the Greeks. And if you guys ever study ancient Egyptian wisdom, you'll discover that Ptolemy, very close to my last name, Tolman, was the general of Alexander the Great. He was actually a genuine bloodline of the Egyptians. You got to understand that the Egyptians, when they conquered, if you go back and look at, for example, Tehuti-Mes, also referred to as Thutmose III. Thutmose III was one of the most powerful rulers of ancient Egypt. He actually dug up the Sphinx, believe it or not. Thutmose III used to run like every morning. I think they say he ran like 22 miles before breakfast, which is a pretty big deal. You got to be pretty amazing rocket individual to run 22 miles before breakfast. But it says that one day when he was out running, he was leaning up against the Sphinx and taking a rest. And he was leaning up against the Sphinx head. Now, you guys got to understand, if you go back and look at history and find out when Thutmose III ruled Egypt and look at the dates, then you listen to the true stories. The Sphinx was already buried in sand and thousands of years old. These things are much older than what we're ever told by the disinformation network called Egyptology. So he's leaning up against the Sphinx's head, and he had a vision. It was just like, whoa, obviously back then their third eye was a little bit more open. They didn't have fluoride and heavy metals and vaccinations and that sort of stuff. So he had this vision, and the Sphinx came to him and said, hey, if you dig me up and restore me back to my original glory, you will be the greatest ruler of all Egypt of this time. And so he had this vision. He did. He actually went in. You can look up. In fact, if you go to the Sphinx in Egypt, there's a huge stela that's put there that actually shows the Hall of Records underneath the Sphinx, and the fact that the Sphinx is sitting on top of a massive Hall of Records underneath, which was originally the entranceway into paths that the initiates would take. The Nile used to run right out in front of the Sphinx, and the Sphinx was representing the age of Leo and facing the east at the sunrise. But, the initiates that had gone through the 13 temples and had learned all about nature and connection and had become physicians, essentially, the last part that they'd go through, which was the true initiation, was underneath the Sphinx, and they'd go through this Hall of Records and learn a lot more, and they'd have to go through all these tests, and then they would actually go through the 3 different levels of the pyramid. And a lot of information, I probably shouldn't share, but I'm just giving you guys the basics, and it would have been one of the most rigorous types of things that you could do, and many people didn't make it. But if you could make it through the subterranean chamber and what happens there, and its connection to Alpha Draconis and all the fear and things that would have come up. And you get to the Queen's Chamber, which was a hierosonic chamber. Hierosonic means sacred sound, just like hieroglyph means sacred writing. If you could build up your sound body and go through that process, then you were ready for the Sekhem chamber, which today we call the King's Chamber. And then you'd have this epic experience. And I'm kind of bouncing around here a little bit, but Tehuti was the name originally of who they deified as Thoth. The ancient Greeks called him Hermes. And all this is going to make sense when I start talking about health and where pharmaceutical companies and hospitals and all this stuff kind of comes from. And I don't know how much I'll get into it. But essentially, Tahutimes III dug up the Sphinx, re-glorified it back to its original glory, and essentially ended up becoming the greatest pharaoh of that time. And he spread the Egyptian kingdom, went all the way up through Jerusalem into Turkey. Like, they were ruling, you know, a massive part of the world on that side of the world, down into Sudan and through Africa and up into even like the present day areas of Jerusalem and Palestine, up into Turkey and all these other areas. And you got to understand that when Egyptians conquered another nation, they would teach those people and integrate their teachings. And the Egyptians, if you research Herodotus, which was called the Great Historian, he said that the Egyptians were the healthiest, the happiest, the cleanest, the most hygienic, means they were very clear about hygiene, externally and internally, and they're all about purification. They're all about health. And in fact, there was a vast number of physicians, because anybody who wanted to excel in life had to go through this rigorous training of becoming a physician, to know thyself. Every human being back in the true ancient Egypt was born into this world and taught who we are, where we come from, why we're here, and what we're here to do. And if you teach individual souls coming into this world why they're here and what we're here to do, and you teach them about karma and cause and effect and as above and so below and all the true laws of nature and the way things operate in the cosmos, then people manage themselves. And if you look back into the true ancient history, there were thousands of years of periods of a population of millions of people that had no standing military or police force. So you got to understand that the ancient Egyptian culture in general were self-empowered individuals who didn't need, yes, it's called the dream stela. I'm seeing some comments popping up here. These people were self-managing, and they were all working towards this process of human evolution. Going back to the stela, on the stela, it actually has the cartouches on the stela that have, and it says right on there, Tehuti, which is the symbol of Thoth with the ibis head. And I could talk about why it was deified with an ibis head. They didn't actually believe there was this bird-headed god. They used the principles of nature to describe certain things and certain individuals. Okay, so you see Tehuti, you can see his image, Tahutimes the third, right on the dream stela. And even Egyptologists get it wrong, and they say it was somebody else. And you know, I've been in Egypt, and I stood there and I was like, actually, just read the cartouche. It says right here, Tahutimes the third. And it's called the dream stela because he had this dream or vision when he was leaning up against the Sphinx. And I tell the story, and they're like, oh yeah, I know that story. It's like, that was Tahutimes the third. And literally, I've had Egyptologists like, oh, well, that makes so much more sense. And it's like, dude, you've been running these tours for 30 years and went to college, and you're telling people the wrong stuff. Like, come on. And I don't think I didn't come up with this. I came up with this because I searched for the first half of my life for true sages and masters, and I found one. And his name is Dr. Ramses Salim. Like I said, he's not with us anymore, but I spent tens of thousands of dollars and traveled around the world to go and train with this guy and learn the truth of our history. which is much more amazing and fantastic and exciting. The truth is stranger than fiction. And the reason that I'm sharing this is, you guys probably know, I'm all about human health. I'm all about human evolution. I'm all about growth and understanding. And the truth is, what's missing in our society today is the foundation of human health. The basic principles, morals, and ethics of human beings has been completely eradicated and lost on purpose. And when we went to school, when I went to school when I was a kid, I wasn't taught morals and ethics and the principles of nature. I wasn't taught the basic principles of how the universe operates and how things are created and cause and effect and positive and negative, male and female, and all these different aspects of life, which were the things that were taught to the ancient Egyptian culture. And the reason I'm talking today a little bit is I want to get into the situation of, how do we regain our health? How do we adopt these principles into our life so that we can grow? How do we know when we're off track? How can we correct issues that are happening with our body? Okay. And so when we look to the medical symbols, you'll see what's called the Pontifex Rex. We call it's RX. You'll see this at the pharmacy. And all of these words, medicine comes from the ancient Egyptian medu sunu. Medut means language or words. Sunu was the original name of the physician. Sunut was the name of a female physician, which the original physicians were female. Sekhmet, if you look up into the history of Sekhmet and her teachings, and then Isis. And, we're taught that this is mythology, but it's the real history. Isis, Sekhmet, Ptah, Osiris, called Ozar. All of these individuals were real beings thousands of years ago, but we're just told anything beyond 6000 BC is a myth, even though we know that the Egyptians had very clear recording of records of everything that they did, down to the minute, down to the day. They knew what was happening with the stars. They knew more about the human body than what we know today. And I can say this with all honesty because I was taught things by this man and the truth of the ancient Egyptians that even just in the last couple of years are starting to be discovered. Even simple things like what is the appendix and what does it do? We're just told, oh, it's a product of evolution and it doesn't have a function anymore. And they just say that because they don't actually know. But there is specific function of your appendix and it has a very specific purpose. And if you have appendicitis or something going on, you probably have parasites and massive inflammation taking place in your digestive system. And there's things that you can do straight away to get rid of the inflammation and get rid of the parasites and heal yourself. And in fact, the symbol that is called the caduceus, or Hermes wand, you see this big pole with this almost pineal looking thing on top and these snakes wrapped around it. And this is what they put out in all of the hospitals and on all of the medical information. It was like, well, why do all the doctors and hospitals and people have this symbol that's an ancient Egyptian symbol? Because Hermes, also referred to as Tahuti, Tahutimes, which means born of Tahuti, that's the line of Tahuti. Yes, even Hermes had children. Okay, they called him Thoth. His name is Hermes Trismegistus, which means thrice great. 3 times Magi, Trismegistus, Hermes Trismegistus. This is a real human being, a true sage, one of the greatest men of all time, the greatest men of wisdom. His original name was Tahuti, and he came from Atlantis. He was one of the greatest physicians in Atlantis. And he came and helped to establish Egypt with the ruler, which his name was Ptah. And they built the pyramid complex, they built the Sphinx, and they set up 13 temples along the Nile River. And they saw as above, so below, that the Nile was very similar to the Milky Way galaxy. When we look in the sky and it looks all milky, the river, and they lined up their pyramids in perfect proportion with Orion's belt. And they lined up all of the temples based on the 13 original signs of the zodiac. Yes, there's 13. And 13 is this number that's always been hidden. Oh, everybody's afraid of, oh, Friday the 13th. And they're, what's the history of this? And why don't they put a 13th floor on a lot of buildings? It's because 13 has been suppressed, because Christ was the 13th. The 12 apostles and Christ was 13, but we never hear that. We just say the 12, because you're not supposed to mention 13, because 13 is a key of our own evolution and growth and potential for immortality. We talk about the 12 signs of the zodiac. We have 12 cranial nerves in the brain, 12 cranial nerves. Each one of those cranial nerves is attached to one of your senses and one of your internal organs. And so we know about Sagittarius and Leo and Virgo and all these types of things, and that there's these different energies and houses, and there's this, spin that's taking place above us, and that these different star systems can literally affect our personality and different things within us. And if you're born under the house of Sagittarius or the house of Virgo, you have very dominant specific qualities. And we haven't been taught this, but what we really need to be doing is embracing all of the 12 signs in the individuals that we're living around and with to evolve. I need to learn to develop a relationship with Virgos. They're very specific, interesting people. I need to learn to get over the shit when it comes to having a relationship with Taurus. Whenever I meet a Taurus and we're developing a relationship, there's this weird energy. And I could just be like, oh, I don't like that person. But the truth is, if I can stand in the fire of whatever energy and stop my judgment and my bullshit and just learn how to connect and communicate with this individual behind the initial issues and feelings that I don't like, is potentially my best friend. And so much that I can learn from another house, another individual, another character, another specific being, that when I cultivate and develop the relationships with all of these 12, actually 13, then I'm learning about myself. The world is like a mirror, and this is why Christ had 12 apostles, and each one of them were specific signs. And there is a 13th sign. In fact, I am the 13th sign. I was born on the 13th day of the 12th month, December 13th, which most people would say is a Sagittarius, and I can relate to that. I have a lot of things specifically related to Sagittarius, but if you look into another hidden sign, it's called Ophiuchus. Ophiuchus. And Ophiuchus was a healer. And it's the only zodiacal sign that's represented by a man. And this man is wrestling with a snake, overcoming the snake. And he was a healer. And I didn't mean to get into that per se, but the truth is, all of these signs are in all of us. The truth is, I am the culmination of all of the signs. I have the 12 cranial nerves. I'm under the 12 sign, 13 signs of the zodiac. I can adopt and put on the mask or bring up the characteristics of Taurus or Virgo or Sagittarius. I can put on a play. This is why we love actors. Actors can change so much and become different people and dig deep into the darkest parts of themselves to the lightest parts of themselves. They can become different people. And every human being has this ability and this capacity. And we should embrace it because we'll learn so much about ourselves. So I want to shift gears here a little bit. And what I will say is that tomorrow morning, I have a free event where I'm going to get into what the ancient Egyptian physicians were teaching as far as iridology and sclerology, face glyphics, the tongue, how to read when we have deficiencies by looking at our nails, by looking at our skin. How can we clean ourselves, rejuvenate ourselves, heal ourselves, and live on this planet, if you choose to, much longer. Not looking old, not looking like you're dying, but actually fully manifesting your purpose. Because when you get into alignment with the principles of nature and the principles of health and the principles in general, there's an energy and a vitality that comes in. And when you have energy, when you have excess energy, you'll start to manifest and create business and create relationships and do things on a whole nother scale that will change your reality, and it'll change the reality of the people around you. And the truth is, this is what's needed on this planet more than anything else. We're in a major point where we're at a crossroads. And I've said this for the last 10 years, and you can go look at recordings of me on stage saying, hey, right now, everything's really gray and nobody really knows. And, good, bad, evil, what, people are just like, science, whatever. And I've been saying 2020 is the great revealing, 2020 vision. The truth will be revealed, and the gray is going to become more black and white. We're in it. We're going through it right now. We're very soon, we're going to see the truth of black and white, and people will have to make a choice. And a lot of people will choose the dark and go that way, and that's their choice. God bless them. And there will be people that will choose to embrace the principles of life and health and vitality and connection and joy and love and forgiveness and removing the trauma, removing the karma, removing all the past stuff so that we can truly move forward into this next stage of human evolution. But that's going to require a lot of work for people who are asleep. The masses are asleep. And everybody's asleep to a degree. And the ancient Egyptians taught this tripartite process of waking up. First, we need to wake up. When we wake up, then we need to learn the processes of purification and purify the mental and emotional and physical so that we can embrace the true activation, the true full activation of our genes. Again, I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about emotions and their impact on our physical state and health in general. We are electromagnetic beings. There's a positive and negative in all things. Positive and negative. The positive is the electrical force. Look at the sun. Positive energy, electrical force, energy, 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 energy. Look at the earth. The earth is the generative. We call it the positive and negative. It's the positive and the generative principle. The G in the compass in the square. It's the generative. The earth, look at it. It's generating, creating things all the time. Look at it. Mangoes, papayas, humans, dogs, cats. Like, it's just everything in abundance being created. The energy of the sun and the creation, negative energy of the earth. So we are also these positive, negative beings, positive and generative. The brain being a part of this, the right side of the body being the masculine, the left side of the body being the feminine, and the brain being masculine and feminine and separated by the lamina. And it's our job to hemisync and unify the brain and open up the 12 cranial nerves. And you guys can research this. The cranial nerves are directly related to our senses. Your sense of smell, sight, taste, touch, and sound, all in the top, all happen in the heavens of the body, the top part of the body. 5 senses. But wait a second, there's 12 cranial nerves. Does that mean there's 12 senses? Yes. So why are we only taught 5? Well, the same reason why we're not taught any truth really that matters. But we all know there's a gut feeling, which is a sense. We all know that we have this 6th sense. Do we ever talk about imagination? Because you can imagine a little purple monkey. Imagine this monkey is totally purple, wearing a yellow hat, with bananas on it. We can all imagine that. Well, that is a sense. It's a sense of imagination. And there's so many other senses that we can develop. But first, we have to lay a solid foundation. There are 7 natural principles that must be observed, and by degree increase and increase and increase to lay the foundation of that pyramid so that we can grow. And then there are 7 universal principles, which were taught by Hermes Trismegistus, and they are called Hermetic principles. These are actual laws, just like this is a law. It's called the law of gravity, okay? And I don't care what you do, you're not going to be able to break that law ever. True universal laws and principles cannot be broken, but higher laws and principles can actually overcome other laws and principles, which means we can overcome gravity if we understand the laws and work with these things. I know I might be getting a little bit off track here for some. Hopefully you're sticking with me here. What I'd like to share is that the fact that we are electromagnetic beings, there's processes for building this electromagnetic energy, and you'll see it outside of every single temple in Egypt. They're standing with their left leg forward, standing on black granite, which is full of crystal, which puts off a form of radiation that nourishes and builds the electrical energy of the body. And these individuals, all of them are holding and squeezing gold bars, because there's always this amazing energy coming out of our hands, which is why human beings have the power of the laying on of hands to heal. And if you're ever sick or injured, the most natural thing is you put your hands, oh, I injured my knee. Oh, it hurts. You rub it. You put your hands, because we are healers. But you can learn to amplify this electromagnetic energy and channel it consciously to actually up-level the level of healing that takes place. And all of the symbols of ancient Egypt were there to remind us of the electromagnetic frequency and the energy pattern of the human body. And if you look at the symbols, the Eye of Horus, it's a direct representation of the internal workings of the brain and the third eye and the hypothalamus and so much more. So the thing to be aware of is we have these things called emotions. Emotion is energy in motion. And we have positive emotions and we have negative emotions. And unfortunately, negative emotions all have their counterpart or organ where these electromagnetic energies are housed. And it might sound completely nuts, but your liver, when you experience hate and anger, your liver, the electromagnetic frequency of your liver operating and doing all the work to keep you healthy and alive, that's why they call it the liver. All of that energy that's required when you hate, when you have anger and frustration and hate, it literally interferes with the electromagnetic frequency of the liver. And the electromagnetic frequency goes off. They call our organs because an organ is a musical instrument. And the organs need to be tuned. And if the organs are in tune, it plays a beautiful song and we experience joy and life and happiness. But when we experience negative emotions and we get stuck on hate, stuck on anger, constantly frustrated, it interferes with it and it damages the liver. And the more you damage your liver, the more you're going to have hate and anger and frustration. And what do people do when they have hate and anger? They drink alcohol to suppress the liver, and it destroys it even more and shuts it down and numbs it. And this is this negative cycle that continues. And whether you drink alcohol to suppress it or use food to suppress it or whatever you're doing to suppress it, so many people have deep hate and anger to the point that literally some people walk around with a smile everywhere they go. Hey, I might be 300 pounds overweight, but I'm always laughing and I'm always joking and I'm always the funny guy. But behind that bullshit facade is absolute hate and anger and frustration. They're just really good at hiding it. And most people that are sick have this level or degree of frustration, hate, and anger that's going on in their liver. I'm just talking about the liver. Okay, the lungs. People got lung issues, got this cough, got this stuff that's constantly coming up. Lungs are directly related to depression. And maybe you're fully aware that you're depressed, or maybe you're suppressing your depression, faking it. Sometimes it's required to come to terms with the fact that you are depressed and realize that it's okay. The world can be depressing. And to have a good cry, and to know that it's okay to be depressed, and you don't need a pharmaceutical drug to suppress your depression. What you need is the principles of health, the principles of life. What you need is the community and the support systems and the truth of who we are and why we're here. Because if you forget who we are and why we're here and where we're going, everyone's going to be depressed. Of course. I've got somebody showing up to get an iridology session and do a consult, and he's calling me, so it might actually pause this. So I might have to end this. But it's so important to become conscious of our underlying emotions, because those emotions are affecting our physical health. I have a webinar tomorrow morning. I choose to speak truth with passion. Constantly, always shout it from the mountaintops, because I want as many people as possible to learn how to heal themselves and learn that your eyes don't lie. Everything you could ever want to know about your mental, emotional, physical traumas, emotional traumas, where you're congested and toxic and things, allergies, and low energy and fat and all this stuff that's going on, you can see inside of your eyes which organs are out of tune, and I can teach you how to retune those organs with emotional clearing techniques, with specific herbs and essential oils and whole foods out of Mother Nature, and adopting and embracing the 7 principles of health, so that we can lay that foundation and get strong and healthy and heal again, and then start to move towards our own evolutionary process and living our purpose here on planet Earth. That's it for today. I've got to go. I love you guys. I hope to see you tomorrow morning. Go to my website, tylertolman.com. Pop in your email so you can get up to date with the events that I'm sharing and teaching. They're all free. Yes, I sell programs for higher education, but just start showing up. Let's grow together. Let's go together. I love you. I hope you got something good out of that. I'll see you soon. Thank you, guys.